Chapter 3191. Dan Wang nodded. Yes, judging from the medicinal fragrance and color, she has indeed improved the flesh jasper ointment by a level. It seems that your 2 tests are not difficult for her. The 19 alchemists were speechless for a moment. None of them knew what to say. They just stared at Fengzhou, watching her boil the ointment and put it in front of them. They raised their heads and looked above their heads. It was not time yet, but she had already finished. Take a look. Fengzhou put the ointment on the table and sighed softly. She took out 2 cups of spirit wine from her space and drank it to ease the tension. The 19 alchemists surrounded her. 19 heads poked forward at the same time to study it. One by one, they said something. Not bad. The color is indeed better than the ointment we brewed. The medicinal fragrance is also very pure and strong. The aura of spiritual power in this ointment is also very pure. The color of the ointment is not mixed. It is dark green, almost like jade. It is really of the highest quality. Listening to the alchemists, the surrounding people were very surprised. They looked at each other and wanted to go forward to take a look. However, they could not squeeze forward. Someone asked, "Is this flesh jasper ointment really better than the previous one?" Even Dan Wang said it is good. Can it be wrong? So, she also passed the second test. As soon as these words came out, everyone's eyes fell on the woman in red. They did not expect her to be so powerful. She actually passed 2 tests in a row. It should be known that the 19 alchemists did not go easy on her in order to prevent her from passing. Even so, she passed easily. It could be seen that she was really capable. Also, if she didn't have the ability, if she didn't have anything special about her, why would the Pill King abandon the 19 alchemists in Pill King's Valley and pick her as his successor? The 19 alchemists looked at the ointment and knew that they could not find any problems with it. They did not give her any pointers on the prescription, but she brewed the ointment based on her own ability. Moreover, the purity of the ointment was better than theirs. How could they not let her pass? What level of alchemist are you? How can you refine such a prescription so easily? An alchemist finally could not help but ask. He wanted to know what level of alchemist she was. Otherwise, they would be too aggrieved. Hearing this, all the alchemists' eyes fell on Fengzhou. They said in unison, "Yes." What level of alchemist are you? You can refine such a prescription so casually. It can be seen that you are not an ordinary alchemist. Dan King's eyes sparkled as he looked at her. Stroking his beard, he chuckled, "That's right, little disciple. Until now, Master still doesn't know what level of alchemist you are. Now that you've passed 2 rounds, shouldn't you also reveal everything to us?" "You?" Fengzhou smiled and looked at them. He took out a senior alchemist's badge from his space and wore it on his chest. He smiled and said, "I should be a senior alchemist." Looking at the shining badge under the sun, everyone's breathing quickened. Their eyes widened as they stared at the shining badge of alchemy venerable. They couldn't help but curse out loud. Chapter 3192. That's right. Too shameless. She's actually an alchemy venerable, and you're actually acting like you don't know anything. Too shameless. This old man has lived for so many years, and I've never met someone as shameless as you. This is simply deceiving us. She's an alchemy venerable, but we still want to test her knowledge of spiritual herbs and how to make medicine. This is simply like asking a child's question to an adult. Too shameless. Taking advantage of us. Looking at the alchemy master's faces flushed red with anger, Fengzhou was stunned and said very innocently, "It's not that I want to hide it from you, but that you never asked me." Hearing these words, the 19 alchemists held their breaths. They were stuck between a rock and a hard place. They only felt that their stomachs were filled with anger and had nowhere to vent it. Wasn't that right? They asked her earlier if she was an alchemy master, and she said yes. She told them honestly, but they didn't ask what level she was at. They just thought that with her age, even if she was an alchemy master, her level wouldn't be high. Who knew that she was already an alchemy venerable? After seeing Fengzhou's badge, Dan Wang's eyes lit up. He, not bad, not bad. You're already an alchemy venerable at such a young age. It's really not bad. Those alchemy masters looked at Fengzhou's innocent face, then looked at her badge, and gritted their teeth. You're already an alchemy venerable, and you can refine 7th level medicinal pills yourself. Why do you still covet our 7th level medicinal pills? This person was too shameless. She herself was an alchemy venerable level alchemist. That 7th tier medicinal pill should have already been refined by her, yet she actually had ideas about their medicinal pills. It was really too outrageous. Fengzhou smiled and said, although I can refine 7th level medicinal pills, not all medicinal pills can be refined successfully. Besides, 7th level medicinal pills are so hard to find. Even if I wanted to refine them, I might not be able to do it casually. She paused for a moment before continuing with a smile. Moreover, as I said earlier, it just so happens that a few of my subordinates are injured. If they pass, I can use your pills to treat their injuries. That's not a bad thing. Cunning as a fox. He actually dared to scheme against us and want our medicinal pills. This is too outrageous. Fengzhou's lips curled into a smile as he looked at them and said, now that we've passed the 2nd test, do you think it's necessary to test us again for the 3rd test? Hearing this, the 19 alchemists couldn't help but widen their eyes. They were already alchemy venerables. What the hell were they still taking the test for? She could even refine a 7th tier medicinal pill, so what else could they use to test her? Seeing that none of them spoke, Fengzhou's smile deepened. So, you all acknowledge my strength? Was it possible to deny it? Being alchemy venerable level at a young age, who among them could compare to this talent? One had to know that they had cultivated wholeheartedly for many years to reach this year's level of strength. Compared to this little girl, they couldn't compare at all. Seeing that none of them had anything to say, Fengzhou smiled as he turned around and walked in front of Dan Wang. He picked up the tea that was placed on the side and bowed with both hands as he offered it. Disciple Fengzhou invites master to drink tea. Dan Wang narrowed his eyes, and a satisfied smile appeared on his face. He nodded and was about to reach out to serve the tea when he heard a voice. Chapter 3193. The old man stared at Fengzhou and asked, since you've become his disciple, why don't you kneel and kowtow? Fengzhou glanced at the old man and said, before I started cultivating, my meridians were sealed and I couldn't cultivate. It was my master who opened my meridians and helped me walk the path of cultivation. Her voice paused and her expression carried a trace of sadness. My master is no longer in this world. He has a special meaning to me. Apart from him, I won't kneel and kowtow to anyone else. I've already made this clear to my master before I agreed to become his disciple. Hearing this, the old man's mouth opened slightly. He was somewhat stunned. He didn't expect this to be the reason. After a moment of silence, he nodded and retreated to the side without saying another word. Dan Wang's eyes flashed and he nodded with a smile, that's right. Fengzhou already told me that she won't kneel and kowtow, and I also agreed. As long as she has me as her master in her heart, it's enough. Whether she kneels or not isn't important. As he spoke, he glanced at Fengzhou and took a sip of the tea. He then placed the teacup to the side and said, from today onwards, you are my disciple and also the young master of Dan Wang Valley. Master doesn't have much to give you. And I'll give you some things related to alchemy. He took out a medical book and a bottle of pills, saying, take these as a gift for becoming my disciple." "Many thanks, master." Fengjiu received them and thanked him before putting them away. Seeing this, the alchemists glanced at each other before taking out pills from their sleeves one by one. Taking out 2 seventh-order pills, they presented them to Yang Kai. Every alchemist took out 2 pills and the bottles were placed neatly on the table. After the 19 alchemists were lined up neatly, they bowed to Dan Wang and congratulated him. "Congratulations, Dan Wang. Congratulations, Dan Wang." After he finished speaking, he bowed to Fengjiu. "Greetings, young Valley Master. We have offended you before, please forgive us." Dan Wang looked at Fengjiu with a smile and gestured for her to speak. When Fengjiu saw this, he said, "It's only natural for you all to test me. I won't take it to heart. Young Valley Master is magnanimous." As the crowd spoke, they finally smiled and said, "Young Valley Master, these are our pills. Each of them is at the 7th level. Please check them." Fengjiu glanced at the pills and said with a smile, "I trust you." As soon as she finished speaking, she flicked her sleeve and put all the pills into her space. She didn't check them. Her actions won the trust and respect of the crowd. It made sense. A person at such a young age who was so outstanding in both ability and talent in alchemy was their young Valley Master. What else could they be dissatisfied with? Although she was a woman, she also showed them that she wasn't inferior to them as a woman. Naturally, they wouldn't act one way behind her back. "Congratulations, Dan Wang. Congratulations, Dan Wang. Greetings, young master." The crowd's voices rang out again. This time, it was the entire Dan Wang Valley shouting. Their voices were loud and echoed in the valley for a long time. In the afternoon, Fengjiu came to the cave abode where Du Fan and the others were. As soon as he entered, they surrounded him. Chapter 3194. Fengjiu smiled and said, "Don't worry, they didn't make things difficult for me. Furthermore, from today onwards, I am also half a master of this Dan Wang Valley." Hearing this, they couldn't help but look at each other. Fan Lin asked, "Mistress, will they let us leave when the time comes?" "Right now, these aren't problems at all. Don't think too much about it. Come, I've brought some medicinal pills for you. Take them and adjust your breathing. These medicinal pills will allow your internal injuries to quickly recover." As she spoke, she took out the medicinal pills she had received earlier from her space. When the bottles were placed in front of them, Fan Lin smelled the medicinal fragrance and couldn't help but open one of the bottles to take a look. He couldn't help but be stunned. "Mistress, this is a 7th level medicinal pill." "That's right, it's a 7th level medicinal pill. This is an inner core. After taking it, your internal injuries will recover in half an hour." She smiled and gestured, "Don't just stand there. Quickly take the medicinal pills and adjust your breathing. Heal your internal injuries first, then we'll talk about other things. Also, here's a bottle of jade flesh ointment. It's extremely effective for external injuries. You guys can try it later." Hearing this, they hurriedly came back to their senses. After responding, they each took one medicinal pill and sat down cross-legged to adjust their breathing. Fengjiu left Tun Yun behind to guard them while she went back first. She hadn't even reached her immortal's cave when someone called out to her on the way. "Young mistress, Dan Wang wants you to go to the back of the mountain." A medicine boy jogged in front of her and said. Hearing this, Fengjiu nodded her head and said, "Understood." After responding, she went to the back of the mountain. When she arrived, she saw a pill cauldron placed there. Dan Wang was sitting cross-legged in front of the pill cauldron. Walking forward, she glanced at the pill cauldron and asked, "Master, why are you looking for me? I have a pill formula here. I plan to let you refine it." As he spoke, Dan Wang handed a piece of paper to her. Fengjiu took a look at it and was slightly startled. Beast form pill. What kind of pill is this? How come she hadn't heard of this pill before? Moreover, there were no notes on the formula. She didn't know what this beast form pill was used for. However, beast form. Could it be a pill related to beasts? Was it for beasts to consume? She guessed in her heart and asked, Master, what is this beast form pill's use? What can it do after refining it? Dan King had no idea where he got the wine from. He lay down on the ground and started drinking. I told you to practice, so practice. What's the point of asking so much? If you want to know how to refine it, you will know. Hearing this, S is S. She looked around, our Dan Wang Valley has a lot of spirit herbs. If you need spirit herbs, you can go to the medicine field or the medicine storehouse. You don't need to tell me. He waved his hand and jumped up. I'm going back to rest. I'll give you 3 days. If you can't refine the beast form pill in 3 days, your master will punish you. Fengjiu was slightly startled. Seeing him wave his hand and leave, she couldn't help but think, punishment. What kind of punishment? Chapter 3195. After he left, Fengjiu took a look at the spiritual medicine listed on the recipe and walked towards the spiritual medicine mountain. There were all kinds of spiritual medicine planted in this valley, and there was even a spiritual medicine storage. It shouldn't be difficult for her to find these spiritual medicine. However, if she had to find them herself, it would take some time. After all, he only gave her 3 days to concoct this beast form pill. Especially when she heard the words he said before he left and saw the malicious smile in eyes. She faintly felt that if she couldn't concoct this beast form pill in 3 days, she would really be punished. Moreover, this punishment would be beyond her expectations. Thinking of this, she hurriedly gathered her thoughts and hurried to find the spiritual medicine. Dan Wang Valley wasn't small, and it took a lot of effort to find the spiritual medicine all over the mountain. In particular, the medicine boys seemed to have received orders from her master and were not allowed to help her gather the spiritual medicine. They were only allowed to tell her which area had the spiritual medicine she needed. By the time she had gathered all the spiritual medicine herbs listed on the recipe, it was already late at night. When she came out of the spiritual medicine storage, her heart couldn't help but tremble. This was because she saw that there were many boxes in the spiritual medicine storage with the names of precious spiritual medicine that were thousands of years old. It was a pity that they were locked. Otherwise, she would have taken them out to take a look. If it was any other time, 3 days would be more than enough for her to concoct a single pill. However, the steps and time required for this beast form pill were rather long. She could only open the furnace and give it a try. She didn't know what his intentions were, but he placed the furnace at the back of the mountain. It seemed like he wanted her to concoct the pill in the back of the mountain. Thus, after she brought the spiritual medicine over, she tidied up her things and placed the spiritual medicine she needed on the side. Then, she lit up a torch to illuminate the area. After she had prepared everything, she looked at the furnace and her eyes flashed. Was this old man testing her? He actually got this furnace for her to concoct pills. The beast form pill was a 7th level pill. How could such an ordinary pill furnace withstand it? Thus, just as she was about to move the cauldron to the side and take out her own cauldron, a little medicine boy quickly ran out. Young master, you can't move. The little medicine boy looked like he was only 8 or 9 years old. His young and tender face was full of seriousness. The valley master said that young master can only use this pill furnace to refine pills and nothing else. Fengjiu blinked and looked at the little medicine boy. She asked, "Where did you come from?" Why didn't she notice him earlier? I came from there. The Valley Lord asked me to assist the young master. The medicine boy turned around and pointed before looking at Fingzhou. The Valley Head has instructed me to stop young master if I see him changing the furnace. Stop what? This pill furnace can't be used to refine 7th grade pills. The moment it is refined, the furnace will explode. She said snappily and patted the pill furnace. Do you know that the furnace will explode? Even the furnace and the pills in it are gone. The little medicine boy shook his head and said with a serious face, I don't know, and I've never seen it before. The people in the valley have never exploded their cauldrons when refining pills. Hearing this, Fengjiu only felt a breath stuck in her throat, unable to go up or down. That old man sent a little brat to cause trouble, right? You stay here. She ordered. Just as she was about to leave, she was pulled by the corner of her clothes. Chapter 3196. The corner of Fengjiu's mouth twitched. That old man had used this pill furnace to refine level 7 pills. She couldn't help but look suspiciously at the pill furnace again. She carefully looked at it and saw that it was just an ordinary pill furnace. However, that old man wouldn't use this to deceive her, right? Could it be that he had really used this pill furnace to refine level 7 pills? Thinking of this, she decided to give it a try first to see if there was anything special about this pill furnace. She signaled for the little medicine boy to retreat to the side. With a flip of her palm, spiritual energy circulated in her palm and a ball of flame shot up from her palm. As she raised her hand, it flew into the furnace along with a gust of spiritual energy. With a whoosh, the flames ignited and the temperature of the entire pill furnace slowly rose. When the temperature of the pill furnace was about right, she first placed the few spirit herbs that she had already processed into it. The fusion of the flames and spirit energy quickly dissolved the spirit herbs. The little medicine boy stood at the side and watched. Seeing that she didn't need his help, he stepped back a little and didn't dare to disturb her. However, just as he was about to find a place to sit down, he heard a loud rumbling sound. He was so frightened that he jumped up and cried out in alarm. Boom! Ah! The pills in the pill furnace suddenly exploded. They exploded out of the furnace and scattered on the ground. A strong spiritual energy and airflow rushed out of the furnace and the entire pill furnace flew up and rolled more than 10 meters away. The loud rumbling sound was extremely loud in the night. Almost at the same time, more than 10 figures quickly rushed over. What happened? What happened? What's going on? The cultivators in the valley were all experts above the heavenly god realm, but they were all frightened by this loud sound. This was because their valley had always been peaceful, and it had never been like this before. Suddenly, a loud rumbling sound rang out, as shocking as heavenly thunder. However, when they arrived, they saw a red-clothed Fengjiu with some medicinal dregs splattered on his body and his face blackened by smoke. More than 10 meters away, a pill furnace with a small flame was still rolling down the slope. Seeing this, one of the cultivators hurriedly rushed forward and caught the pill furnace that was rolling down, placing it in front of Fengjiu. He looked at Fengjiu and smiled. He sighed in relief and said, "We were wondering what happened. So it was young Valley Master refining pills. You really scared us. Is young Valley Master hurt?" Another cultivator asked. He saw that Feng Ix's face was dark and there were flames in her eyes. She looked angry. "I'm fine." After Fengjiu took a deep breath, he looked at them and said, "Master told me to refine a pill in 3 days. I think something similar will happen in the next few days. You don't have to come every time." He, okay. They laughed awkwardly. Seeing that there was nothing wrong, they turned and left. After they left, Fengjiu brushed off the medicinal dregs on his body. His gaze fell on the pill furnace in front of him and he frowned slightly. At this time, the little medicine boy hiding in the back carefully walked forward, as if afraid that Fengjiu would scold him. He quickly said, "Young master, the furnace didn't explode. It's the medicine that exploded." Chapter 3197. That's right. This cauldron didn't explode. She smiled mysteriously as her gaze fell on the cauldron. The medicine had exploded, but the cauldron hadn't. Something wasn't right. Yes. The Valley Master said that the cauldron wouldn't explode and could refine pills. The little medicine boy hurriedly said, as if to prove that what he said was true. His clear eyes were still tightly fixed on the cauldron that hadn't exploded. Seeing this, Fengjiu chuckled softly, "I know." She looked around and said, "It's late, you should go back and rest. I don't need your help here. But the Valley Master asked me to come and help." As the little medicine boy spoke, he lowered his head slightly and stood still with his little fingers touching each other. He didn't want to leave. Fengjiu smiled and asked, "You're so young. What can you help me with here?" I can deliver the medicine." "Young master, tell me what you want me to do. I will help." He blinked and raised his head with a serious expression, as if he wanted to convince Fengjiu. He puffed out his little chest. Hearing this, Fengjiu thought for a moment and said, "Then how about this? You go back and rest first. Come over early tomorrow morning to help." It was definitely not good to let such a young child stay up late. It was better to send him back first. The little medicine boy wanted to say something, but after thinking about it, he didn't say anything. He only nodded and promised, "I'll come over tomorrow morning." As he spoke, he quickly turned and ran off. Seeing the little medicine boy run off, Fengjiu couldn't help but chuckle softly. She couldn't help but think of little Hao at home. That little guy had just learned how to walk. She wondered when he would be able to run as fast as that. And she wondered if he had come out of seclusion. Thinking about it, if she didn't go back, her family would probably be worried. Thinking of this, she remembered that she hadn't told them that she was safe. She wondered if Fan Lin and the others had sent a message back. She had forgotten to ask them. Looking at the night sky, she took out her communication jade tablet. Originally, she wanted to send a message to Zhe, but when she remembered that he was in seclusion, she used her communication jade tablet to tell Lang Hua about the situation here. In the night sky, she continued to refine pills. However, throughout the night, the pills were still blown out, but the cauldron wasn't damaged. She studied it for a long time, but she couldn't figure out what was so special about it. Seeing that the sky gradually brightened and the east was gradually brightened, an idea flashed across her mind. She, who was originally sitting on the ground, but she immediately jumped. "I know. Her head's and test SS right. It's the controls SS, T test SS. S is T T T T T T." At that moment, she was prepared to refine it again to verify if her guess was correct. However, at this moment, she saw a small figure carrying a food box carefully walk over. He even used one hand to protect the food box, as if to prevent the contents from spilling out. Fengjiu looked at the sky and was surprised. This little brat actually woke up so early. And what did he bring? "Young master, I'm here." As the little medicine boy spoke, he quickened his pace and carefully placed the food box on the table. He said, "I've also brought breakfast for young master." Chapter 3198. I brought some salty porridge and steamed buns. The people in the kitchen said they were steamed buns made from spirit pork. I ate them just now and they were delicious. There's also a pie. As he spoke, he looked at Fengjiu and asked, "Young master, is this enough?" If it's not enough, I'll go back and get more. It's enough. Feng Jiu smiled and reached out to pinch his face. As expected, 2 black fingerprints were left on his face. She chuckled and took out her hands to wash them. She asked, "Did you come here after eating? Then you must have woken up before the sun rose." The little medicine boy nodded. "Yes, I woke up when the rooster crowed." After washing her hands, Fengjiu placed the food on the ground and sat on the grass to eat. She asked, "What's your name?" "My name is Tian Dong. I was picked up by the valley master." Hearing this, Fengjiu looked at him. "Oh. So you grew up here?" "Yes, I grew up here. The people in the valley are all very good. The people in the kitchen often give me food to eat." Speaking of this, the little medicine boy smiled happily. Fengjiu nodded and didn't say anything else. She just handed the steamed buns to him. "You eat this. I'll be full after eating this porridge and steamed buns." "But I just ate." "Then you can keep it. You can eat it when you're hungry." Fengjiu quickly finished the porridge and steamed buns in front of her and asked, "I don't know what I want you to help me with. How about this? You just have to bring me food 3 times a day. However, if I'm refining pills, you can't disturb me." Hearing this, Tian Dong nodded. "Yes." After eating her fill, Fengjiu tried again. She first tried to control the flame's balance. Logically speaking, she was already very proficient in controlling the flame's balance, so there shouldn't be any accidents. After trying again, she found that the problem wasn't in the flame's balance, but in the spiritual medicine she threw in. This was troublesome. Or was it because of the spirit herbs? How could she prevent the spirit herbs from colliding with each other? The beast form pill was also a 7th level pill, but he didn't expect it to be so difficult to refine. For the past 2 days, she had been trying to figure out how to concoct this beast form pill. However, no matter how she tried to concoct it according to the pill formula or her own method, she was still unable to successfully concoct this beast form pill. Seeing that the 3 days were almost up, she still hadn't made any progress. On the 3rd day, Dan Wang was wearing a gray robe. He stroked his beard as he slowly walked over. He seemed to have expected that Fengjiu would not be able to refine the beast form pill. When he arrived in front of her, he glanced at the pill furnace that didn't have the slightest bit of heat. He then glanced at Fengjiu, who was sitting on the ground, and asked with a smile, "What's wrong? You can't make it." Fengjiu stood up and said, "Master, please guide me." She really didn't know which step she had gone wrong. She had concocted level 7 elixirs many times, but she couldn't concoct this level 7 beast form elixir. It's not difficult to guide you, but the punishment." He stroked his beard and glanced at Fengjiu. Hearing this, Fengjiu glanced at him and asked, "Master, how do you want to punish me?" As soon as he finished speaking, he flipped his palm and a medicinal pill appeared in his hand. Chapter 3199. What kind of pill is this? Fengjiu asked, her gaze falling on the pill. Seeing that it was actually a 7th level pill, the corner of her mouth couldn't help but twitch. This old man, he even took out a 7th level pill to punish her. Sure enough, Dan Wang was amazing. He didn't even take a 7th level pill seriously. You'll know once you eat it. Dan Wang chuckled and said, "Don't worry, it's not poisonous." Fengjiu rolled her eyes. Of course she knew it wasn't poisonous, but the problem was, she didn't want to be a lab rat. She took a step back and said, "Master, change the punishment method. You said that I'm a pill refiner. I'm already sick of the smell of pills. You still want me to eat pills, isn't this?" Before she could finish her words, the old man in front of her had already appeared in front of her in a flash. He sealed her acupoints at a speed that was too fast for her ears to cover. At the same time, he stuffed the pill into her mouth. He lifted her chin with one hand, and the pill slid down her throat. Seeing Fengzhou staring blankly, Dan Wang smiled and stroked his beard. Why are you saying so much? I've always been a man of my word. If I say I'll punish you, then I'll punish you. Moreover, it's not a physical punishment, but a pill punishment. He, didn't you want to know what kind of pill this is? Don't worry, you'll know in a while. Fengzhou stared at him. She didn't expect him to use force without saying anything. She knew that his strength was unfathomable, but she didn't expect him to be so fast that she didn't even have the chance to react. At this moment, her entire body was tense, unable to move an inch, and she couldn't even speak. She couldn't help but hold her breath, her face flushed red. This old man, he was too sinister. And, let me think, where should I send you? He stroked his beard and paced back and forth beside Fengzhou. He stared at her for a while and clapped his hands. I got it. Fengzhou faintly had a bad premonition. She wanted to ask, but she couldn't say anything. Thus, she asked with her spiritual sense, in any case, I call you master. No matter what, you have to be merciful. Don't make me too miserable, right? Hearing this, the old man chuckled. Disciple. Master won't prank you. Master is doing this for your own good. As he spoke, he used his spiritual energy to draw an ancient array on the ground. The array glowed with a rich spiritual energy. After looking at the array, he smiled with satisfaction and pushed Fengzhou to the center of the array. Disciple. Take care of yourself. You must come back alive. As the old man spoke, he left a trace of his spiritual sense on Fengzhou when she wasn't paying attention. Then, he activated the array. With a burst of dazzling light, Fengzhou disappeared into the array. As if space had been twisted, Fengzhou only felt a splitting headache. She lost her balance and was sucked into a bottomless black hole. When her body landed, she realized that she was in a forest. When she felt that she could move, she stood up and stretched her arms and legs. However, at this moment, a light flashed on her body and she transformed into the appearance of a fire phoenix. The red clothes on her body became her feathers. The difference between her and Fire Phoenix was that although she was in the shape of a bird, the feathers on her body were the dazzling red of her clothes. Chapter 3200. He actually gave me a beast form pill. What is this old man trying to do? She only felt a surge of anger rising from her chest. She never thought that she would actually turn into a bird. She wondered how long the effects of this beast form pill would last. Don't tell me they're going to throw me into this unknown place and let me live here in this beast form. Thinking of this, she even had the urge to kill someone. Look! There's a red bird over there. No. That's a phoenix. The sudden sound of surprise made Fengzhou come back to her senses. She took a deep breath and coldly glanced in the direction of the sound. However, this look only made her even angrier. She originally thought that it was a human, who knew that it was actually a demon. The trees in front of her were probably over 1,000 years old and had cultivated into demon forms. At this moment, they were excitedly waving their branches and leaves as they stared at her. When she looked around, she saw that the trees that were originally no different from ordinary trees, after the sound came out, a face appeared on each of the trees. Catch it! A bit of phoenix blood essence is enough for us to escape from our tree forms. The tree demons excitedly said and waved their branches, wanting to catch Fengzhou. No, in the eyes of the tree demons, it was only a small phoenix, a beautiful little phoenix with dazzling red feathers. Seeing the tree demons waving their branches over, Fengzhou narrowed her eyes. She gathered the spiritual energy in her body and flapped her wings to fly up. With a thought, her spiritual energy surged and flames flew out along with her wings, attacking the tree demons. Mere little demons dare to be impudent in front of me. She flew high up in the sky and looked down at the tree demons that were struggling and screaming in the flames. Ah, hissed out in the flames, the tree demons waved their branches. The leaves were burned in the flames and the branches became charred. In the end, they turned into a pile of black charcoal, leaving behind only the wails and screams in the wind. Fengjiu stopped in the sky and looked down at the scene below. In her mind, she wondered how Du Fan and the others' injuries were. After taking that pill, if they were lucky, they might be able to take advantage of that 7th level pill to advance, right? There was also cloud swallowing. Just as she was thinking about swallowing clouds, she suddenly felt a flash of light and turned into the appearance of a cloud-swallowing beast in midair. It was still just that the fur on its body was red. This sudden change caught her off guard and she lost her balance in midair and fell down. Ah! She let out a cry of surprise and fell head first. However, just as she was about to hit the ground, she changed back into her fire phoenix form. With a flap of her wings, she stabilized herself and flew up steadily. She couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. This beast form pill took the form of the beast she contracted with. She muttered softly. She looked at her current appearance, and with a thought, she transformed back into Lao Bai's appearance. As expected, she changed back again, still maintaining the shape of a fire phoenix. She looked around and her gaze fell on a tall mountain not far away. Thus, she flew over there, intending to go up and see what kind of place this was. After taking the beast form pill, not only could she take the form of her contracted beast, she could also use the contracted beast's battle skills and specialties. After experimenting as she flew, she finally took the form of a fire phoenix and turned into an ordinary little bird. Chapter 3201. However, she was still too naive. As she flew all the way to the mountain peak, the demons in the forest ran amok, and there were even giant bird-type monsters attacking her. When she finally reached the top of the mountain peak, she looked around and could not help but be stunned. As far as the eye could see, there were only forests and mountain peaks. There was no end in sight, as if there was no way out. What the hell is this place? She muttered. At this moment, a dark cloud suddenly shrouded over her head. She looked up and saw a giant eagle swooping down, its 2 curved claws grabbing at her. Damn it! She cursed under her breath and quickly leaped forward. However, as soon as she flew out in the form of a small bird, she was caught by the eagle's claws. Her entire body was brought up to the top of the forest. After flipping over a few mountain peaks, she was finally thrown into a nest on a cliff. As soon as she was thrown into the nest, a few small eagles pounced on her, their curved beaks pecking at her. She immediately waved her hand and brushed the small eagles away. Seeing the old eagle standing at the side and staring at her, she narrowed her eyes and said coldly, "If you don't let your children go, be careful that I'll roast them all." When the old eagle heard this, it was instantly enraged and stomped down with its claws. Fengjiu was also enraged when he saw this and immediately shot a flame at the old eagle. The old eagle probably did not expect a strange-looking bird to be able to spit fire, and its feathers were burned by the flame before it could react. The eagle screeched and flapped its wings in an attempt to extinguish the flame. At the same time, its claws were once again aimed at Fengjiu. The 2 birds of different sizes, one big and one small, started fighting at the cliff, scaring the small eagles to the side. After fighting with Fengjiu, the old eagle, who was clearly at a disadvantage, curled up in fear, trying to cover its body that had been burned to the point where only a few feathers were left. It asked in a shrill voice, "You, what kind of bird are you? Why has it never met a bird like this before?" Its combat power was too ferocious. The feathers on its body were almost burnt away by its flames. Fingjiu glanced at the retreating old eagle and then at the small eagles. Perhaps because she saw that the old eagle still had a few small eagles to raise, she was merciful and did not directly kill it. "Who told you that I'm a bird?" Fingjiu glanced at it and said, "Let me ask you, where is this place? How big is this forest?" Hearing this, the old eagle looked at Fingjiu strangely and said, "You don't know? Why are you here if you don't know? Could it be that you came from somewhere else?" "I'm asking you a question," Fingjiu's eyes as she looked at the old eagle. Hearing this, Fingjiu frowned. Why did the old man leave her here? Was he really going to let her stay here for a while? How was she going to go back? Perhaps because Fingjiu did not speak, the old eagle continued, "In this demonic beast forest, other than the demonic beasts and spirit beasts, there are also some cultivators who come here to gain experience. However, I don't know how they come here, nor do I know how they leave." Chapter 3202. Yes, I've seen them before. However, those cultivators are very powerful, so it's best if you don't go near them. The old eagle kindly reminded him, but after some thought, he added, "However, you seem to be more powerful than them. Even if you encounter them, you should be fine." Fingjiu looked at the sky, then at the surroundings, and finally said, "Since you've captured me, I'll rest here for the night." Hearing this, the old eagle seemed to want to say something, but when he met the other party's eyes, he couldn't bring himself to object. He could only nod and say, "All right. However, you can't harm my children." Fingjiu lay down in the nest and said, "All right, as long as they don't provoke me." Originally, he hadn't had a good rest during the 3 days of refining pills, and it was the same here. Now that he was at the cliff, he could finally have a good rest. The old eagle's nest was high up on the cliff, and it could be said that resting here with the old eagle's guard was very safe. Thus, Fingjiu relaxed and slept in the nest. The nest was occupied, and the young eagles could only shrink to the side, not daring to disturb the little bird that had taken over their nest. This little bird looked very harmless, and its small body wasn't very big, but its fighting strength was astonishing. After seeing the previous battle, they were already traumatized by this little bird, and didn't dare to eat it. Fingjiu slept soundly. High up in the sky, it was quiet and serene, and a cool breeze gently brushed against her body, making her feel very comfortable. It was also because she slept so soundly that when night fell and the sky turned dark, there was a flash of light from her body, and she silently returned to her original appearance, returning to her human form. This scene shocked the old eagle that was keeping watch, as well as the young eagles that were huddled in a corner of the nest. They thought that they had seen wrongly, and shook their heads to look again. Where the little bird had been sleeping, there was now a human sleeping. And it was a beautiful human wearing a red robe. Heavens! This little bird with astonishing fighting strength actually turned into a human. Was she originally a human? Or had she cultivated into a human form? For a moment, both old eagle and young eagle stared at the red ball, wanting to see what it was. Perhaps it was these pairs of eagle eyes staring at Fingjiu that woke her up from her deep sleep. She opened her eyes and glanced at the eagle, asking, "Why are you staring at me so late at night? How can I sleep with you staring at me like that?" Perhaps because she had slept, her voice carried a trace of laziness. Especially in the night, it sounded even more seductive. Old Eagle pointed at Fingjiu with his wings and stammered, You turned into a human. I've always been a human." Fingjiu raised her hand and yawned as she spoke casually. However, the moment she raised her hand and saw her red clothes and palms, she couldn't help but be stunned. She sat up and lowered her head to look at her body. She had actually returned to her human form. Could it be that the effects of the medicine have worn off? She couldn't help but exclaim in pleasant surprise. She still felt that her human form was more comfortable. Now that she had returned to her human form, she immediately asked, "Old Eagle, is there a water source nearby? I want to take a bath." Taking a bath in the middle of the night. Chapter 3203. Fengjiu stuck her head out of the nest and looked down. Due to the height, she couldn't see anything, so she said to Old Eagle, "Bring me down." Old Eagle was a little unwilling, but it didn't dare to refuse. Instead, it asked, "You're a human cultivator. Don't you know how to fly on a sword? Why do you need me to bring you down? I'm not familiar with the terrain below, and it's already so late at night. I'll go take a bath. I'll be more at ease with you watching over me." With that said, she smiled and shot Old Eagle a glance. "Who told you to bring me back? Tell me, if I don't look for you, who else should I look for?" Old Eagle couldn't help but stifle its anger when it heard this. In the end, it didn't say anything. Instead, it let out a breath of air and flapped its wings to fly down to the nest, allowing Fengjiu to climb onto its back. Fengjiu leaped up and grabbed Old Eagle's feathers with both hands. As she flew down, she felt the speed of her descent quicken. The night wind blew against her face, causing her to feel a stinging pain. After a while, she arrived at the bottom. Sure enough, there was a water source below. It seemed to be the mouth of a spring, sparkling under the moonlight. "You want me to stand guard here?" Old Eagle asked as it looked around. "It's already so late at night. Even if there are demonic beasts here, they'll be demonic wolves. I'm not good at dealing with demonic wolves." Fengjiu took off her outer clothes and walked towards the mouth of the spring. "Stand guard. I'll be done soon." With that said, she took off her outer clothes and quickly entered the water. The cool spring water seeped into her skin, and the refreshing feeling made her feel much more energetic. She dove into the water, washed her hair, and soaked for a while before hearing Old Eagle's anxious voice. "Quickly come up. There are demonic wolves coming." "Awoo!" Wolf howls reverberated through the forest. It was impossible to tell where they came from, but the ground was shaking slightly. It seemed like the demonic wolves were chasing after something. Moreover, there were quite a few of them. Fengjiu frowned. What she said really happened. Just as she wrung the water out of her hair and was about to get up, she vaguely saw a man with scars all over his body running towards her. When she saw who it was, she immediately slapped the water with her palm. As the water splashed, she turned around and flew out of the water. She took out her clothes from the space and quickly put them on. In the blink of an eye, she had put on her clothes. However, her hair was still wet and was still dripping with water. The injured man who was running over only saw an eagle staring at him from above. Just as he was about to run in another direction, he caught a glimpse of a woman in the water. Before he could take a closer look, he saw a splash of water forming a curtain. A woman jumped out of the water and instantly put on a red robe. The woman was dressed in a dazzling red dress. She had a slim waist, and the moment she landed on the ground, her ink-black hair was tossed aside, and water droplets splashed everywhere. Her enchanting and charming face instantly made him mesmerized. That alluring beauty made him feel as if he was looking at a fairy from the ninth heaven who had accidentally landed in the mortal world. However, in the next moment, he abruptly returned to his senses. It was because her clear eyes were cold and breathtaking, and they carried a noble and inviolable bearing. It caused him to forcefully stop the thoughts in his heart, and he couldn't help but concentrate his mind. "Fairy, run! A pack of demonic wolves is coming." After the man returned to his senses, he immediately warned her. However, he still instinctively ran in the direction of the red figure. Chapter 3204. Each of the demon wolves that were chasing after them weighed around 150 kilograms. Their eyes were blood red, and their bodies were huge. Their movements were agile, especially the one in the lead. Every time it ran, the ground would shake. It could be seen that its weight was not light. She watched as one of the wolves roared and pounced toward the man. Her hand swept through her hair that was dripping with water. The water droplets instantly gathered between her fingers, and her aura formed a sharp ice blade that shot toward the wolf. Whoosh! The sharp sound cut through the air and shot towards the demon wolf at an extremely fast speed. The speed was so fast that the demon wolf, which had already pounced forward, could not stop its body from retreating and was pierced by the ice blade. A-oh! The huge body fell from the sky due to that blow. It landed heavily on the ground and let out a miserable howl. The howl became weaker and weaker until finally, the body twitched a few times and stopped moving. This was because one of the ice blades had struck the vital point between the demon wolf's eyebrows. One strike was enough to take its life. When the injured man heard the sound behind him, he couldn't help but turn around to look. What he saw made him stunned. He abruptly turned around to look at the beautiful red-clothed woman standing in front of him in disbelief. She actually killed a demon wolf in one move. His heart was shocked, but he still quickly walked to her side. Miss, no, Fairy. Fingyo looked at the remaining 11 demon wolves and a dark light flashed through her clear eyes. Perhaps it was because she had killed a demon wolf in one move, but the other demon wolves that were originally running towards them all stopped. They didn't attack and instead surrounded them. Human. You've got guts. The leading demon wolf king stared at Fingyo and angrily bared its sharp fangs. It even stared at Fingyo with drool dripping from its mouth. It looked as if it wanted to pounce on her and tear her apart. Fengjiu brushed her black hair with both hands, and her spiritual power surged, instantly drying the dripping black hair. Her silky black hair was loose, and she took out a ribbon to tie it up. She looked at the demon wolf king and said, "If you don't want to die in my hands, then leave quickly. Otherwise, I don't mind letting all of you die here." His voice was neither fast nor slow. The confidence and nonchalance in his voice caused the demon wolves to hesitate when they heard it. The demon wolf king stared at the absolute beauty in front of it. It saw that there was no fear between her brows, nor was there any panic. On the contrary, when it met her eyes, it actually felt a sense of fear. The pressure and aura in her eyes were too sharp and powerful, causing it to involuntarily take a step back. Inexplicably, it felt that this human woman was terrifying, especially when she had killed a demon wolf in one move. It could be seen that her strength was not ordinary. The intelligent demon wolf king thought about it again and again. In the end, it gritted its teeth and raised its head to howl. It then said to the man, "I'll let you go this time. If we meet again, we'll definitely tear you apart." With that, the demon wolf king turned around and left with the 10 demon wolves. Just like when they came, the sound of 10,000 horses galloping caused the ground to tremble. Chapter 3205. However, when he regained his senses and was about to thank the woman for saving his life, he discovered that the red-clothed woman who was originally standing at the side had disappeared. "Fairy! Fairy!" He shouted as he looked around, but he didn't see a single person. It was as if the woman had never appeared, vanishing without a trace. If not for the corpse of the monster wolf lying on the ground in front of him, he really would have thought that it was a hallucination caused by his injuries. Fingzhou, who was sitting on Old Eagle's back, returned to the cliff and lightly jumped back into the nest to lie down comfortably. She lightly exhaled and took out some wine from her space to drink as she said, "Old Eagle, your nest is actually quite warm, and the grass is also quite comfortable. At least in this forest, a nest like yours isn't bad." Fengzhou chuckled as she looked at the stars in the sky. "I can also enjoy the night scenery and admire the moon." Old Eagle's mouth twitched when he heard this. He flapped his wings and squatted to the side, asking, "Why are you leaving after saving that person?" "That's a human, one of your kind. Since I'm already here, I can't leave so quickly. Moreover, the old man who sent me here probably didn't just let me walk around. Think about it, I still need to familiarize myself with this place. Tomorrow, I'll go and practice with the monsters in this forest." She tilted her head back and drank. Seeing Old Eagle staring at her, she asked with a smile, "What? You want to chase me away? Are you afraid that I'll occupy your nest?" Old Eagle moved his mouth and said in a low, muffled voice, "I wouldn't dare." Even if he had an opinion, he didn't dare to say it. This pervert was someone who could kill a monster wolf with a single move. In any case, she was still a human, so she wouldn't occupy his nest forever. However, Old Eagle never imagined that he would bring back such a troublesome thing. If he had known earlier, he would have definitely avoided her from afar. Don't worry, I'll be leaving tomorrow. I'll be borrowing your nest to rest tonight." As she spoke, she drank a few mouthfuls of wine and put it back into her space. She threw a few spirit fruits to the young eagles before closing her eyes to rest. When the eagles saw the spirit fruit, they couldn't help but cry out excitedly. They pounced on the spirit fruit and started pecking at it. Fengjiu slept until the next morning. Although Old Eagle, who was keeping watch at night, didn't keep a close eye on Fengjiu, he still glanced at her from time to time. However, when dawn came and the sun rose, he inadvertently glanced at Fengjiu. Just as he was about to look away, he was dumbfounded and stared at Fengjiu with wide eyes. How did this human become a cloud-swallowing beast? It stared at the red-furred cloud-swallowing beast with its eagle eyes and was speechless for a long time. It couldn't understand how a human could suddenly turn into a bird, then into a human, and then into a cloud-swallowing beast. Those little eagles had also woken up long ago. Seeing that the human had changed again, they could not help but shrink together, not daring to make a sound. Thus, these pairs of eagle eyes stared at the sleeping cloud-swallowing beast until the little beast moved its body, raised its hand, and yawned before opening its eyes. The moment Fengjiu opened her eyes, she saw a furry paw. She was startled and blinked, thinking that she had seen wrong. However, when she closed her eyes again, it was still a furry paw. Chapter 3206. That damned old man. She couldn't help but curse. Seeing her hand turn into a claw and the anger from being woken up, she was about to explode. That old man's beast form pill allowed her to turn into a beast during the day and a human at night. How long would it take for the pill's effects to wear off? Wouldn't she have to switch between beast and beast every day? Thinking of this, she only felt sullen. Her master was stronger than her, and the pills he refined were also better than hers. Throwing her here for a mere beast form pill, she was simply asking for trouble. Seeing the cloud-swallowing beast sitting there angrily cursing, Old Eagle couldn't help but hesitate before asking, "Are you all right?" Actually, what he wanted to ask was, "How did you turn into a beast? And a cloud-swallowing beast?" But seeing her angry face, he didn't dare to ask. Fengjiu took a deep breath and exhaled, calming her anger from waking up early in the morning. Then, she said, "Send me down." "All right." Old Eagle flew out and lowered his wings in front of her. Fengjiu jumped up and laid on Old Eagle's back. After reaching the bottom, she said to Old Eagle, "You can go back. I'll walk on my own." Old Eagle nodded, then flapped its wings and flew up. In the air, it looked down and saw that the cloud-swallowing beast had shrunk into its pet form and was walking in the forest. Although it was small, its red fur was still very dazzling. Retracting his gaze, he thought to himself, "I wonder which unlucky person will meet her, Fengjiu walked in the forest and walked out of the dense forest. She came to a place where the weeds were half a person's height. Because she was too small, she couldn't see the path ahead. Thus, she prepared to turn into a little bird and fly into the air. But at this moment, she heard a voice. "There's actually such a beautiful little beast here." It was a girl's voice, surprised and excited. Fengjiu turned around, but the moment she turned around, a silver net covered her head. "Got it, got it," the woman said excitedly. She turned to the middle-aged man beside her and said, "Thank you, father." Just as she was about to step forward, she was pulled back by the middle-aged man. "Father, what's wrong?" the woman asked curiously as she looked at her father who was holding her hand. "This little beast is a cloud-swallowing beast, but I've never seen a cloud-swallowing beast with fiery red fur. It looks a bit strange, so it's better to be careful," the middle-aged man said as he looked at the little beast trapped in the silver net. He then said to the two people beside him, "You two go up and take a look. Be careful, don't get hurt." "Yes." Two men in their 30s stepped forward to collect the net. They thought they would be attacked by the little beast, but they didn't expect that the little beast would just squat on the ground and look at them without moving. Even when they collected the silver net and caught the little beast, it didn't resist or attack. "Patriarch, this little beast looks very tame," the two men said to the middle-aged man. Hearing this, the woman couldn't help but quickly step forward and take the little beast whose fur was being pulled. She said, "Don't pull its fur like that. It's so small, it'll hurt." The two men smiled helplessly and retreated to the side. Chapter 3207. Fengjiu lay in the lady's arms and was hugged tightly by her, pressing against her soft chest, making her speechless. Unexpectedly, a silver net covered her, and she was caught just like that. Seeing that the other party didn't seem to want to kill her, she was too lazy to move and just lay down to rest. The middle-aged man looked at the little beast and said with some surprise, "I didn't expect this little beast to be so docile. Maybe it's because it's a little beast." Otherwise, he really couldn't think of anything that would allow a small beast to be so tame and survive in this demonic beast forest. "Father, let's rest for a while," the lady looked at her father and said. Hearing this, the middle-aged man looked around and nodded, "All right, let's rest for a while. Let's go over there." He pointed to the front and led them there. Fengjiu, who was lying in the lady's arms, lazily looked at them and saw that there were only 4 of them, including the lady. The strongest was the middle-aged man and the other 2 were not too bad. However, it was strange that such a weak person like this lady was brought here. After all, this was the demonic beast forest and it was extremely dangerous. The slightest carelessness could cause one to fall into a hopeless situation and become a meal for the demonic beasts. In such a place, they actually brought a young lady who wasn't very strong and had a hidden illness. They were really tired of living. However, what she didn't expect was that after they sat down to rest for a while, the young lady actually shot a snake that was coiled around a tree and pushed it in front of her. "Come, eat something. You eat this snake meat." The lady moved the decapitated snake in front of her and put the little beast down. "Eat quickly. Although these little demonic beasts are a little weak, they should be nourishing for you." Fengjiu's mouth twitched. Nourishing? Which eye of hers saw that she needed to eat snake meat to nourish herself? Furthermore, this whole snake was placed in front of her, how was she going to eat it? Did they really think she was a beast? "Miss, this little beast seems to be a little picky. It actually doesn't eat snake meat," a man at the side said with a smile. He looked at the little beast with a look of disdain as it turned its eyes away to look at the sky. He actually felt that it was so human-like, very cute, very cute. Not eating snake meat. Why don't we change our seed? The woman saw that the little beast was indeed disgusted, so she looked at the man who spoke. Big Brother Ching, you keep all the corpses of the demonic beasts we killed along the way. Take some out for the little beast to eat. Hearing this, the man thought for a moment and said, "All right." As he spoke, he took out a dead demon pig from his spatial ring and said, "Let's roast some as well. Replenish your energy." "All right." The woman replied with a smile. She cut off a small piece of the demonic pig's meat and handed it to the little beast. Come, try this. This is not snake meat, this is demonic pig meat. The demonic pig meat is very fresh and delicious. I'm sure you'll like it after you eat a small piece. Fingzhou turned her head away in disdain. There was no way she would like a piece of raw demonic beast meat. In order to prevent the woman from feeding her the raw meat, she directly jumped into the woman's arms and buried her head to rest. Chapter 3208. The father and daughter were chatting while the other two were busy picking up sticks to roast the meat. Time passed unknowingly, and it wasn't until Fengzhou, who was resting in the woman's arms, smelled the smell of roasted meat that she leaped out of the woman's arms and squatted by the bonfire while looking at the roasted meat that had been roasted to a golden color. "Ah, it seems like this little beast likes to eat cooked food." When the man saw the little beast staring at the roasted meat, he couldn't help but smile. This little beast is also strange. The beasts here all eat raw food, why does it like cooked food? Could it be that it was raised by a human? Did it get lost? The other man also said, looking at the squatting little beast. When the woman heard this, she was startled. Raised by a human? You're saying that this little beast has an owner? The middle-aged man nodded. That's possible. This little beast is obviously different from the other beasts here. It doesn't eat raw food and is not afraid of humans. It's normal to say that it was raised by a human. Fengzhou turned to look at them, then stared at the roasted meat. When the woman saw this, she went forward and cut a small piece of roasted meat, wrapped it in a tree leaf and handed it to the little beast. "Come, eat." She was about to put it on the ground, who knew that the little beast would grab the piece of meat wrapped in the tree leaf with its two paws. Just like that, it squatted and hugged the piece of meat to eat. Looking at this appearance that was very similar to a human, the woman was startled. Maybe it really was raised by a human. Fengzhou ignored them and ate the roasted meat while listening to them talk. Only then did he know that there were not only these few people, but there were also some who got lost and were now looking for those who got lost. The reason they came in was because of a big monster in the monster beast forest. They wanted to take the monster beast horn and exchange it with the alchemist to cure the woman's disease. Listening to their conversation, she leaped into the woman's arms after eating her fill. She felt that this temporary bed was quite comfortable. In the afternoon, the few of them continued to walk forward, and Fengzhou was also brought along by the woman. In any case, she felt that she would have to stay here for a while, so she might as well take a stroll. She wanted to see when the effects of the beast form pill would wear off, and how long would she have to stay here before she could return to Danwang Valley. She had a feeling that if she were to leave this place with the other cultivators, she would never be able to return to Pill King Valley. If she wanted to return, she would have to continue staying here. She believed that after a period of time, the old man would still bring her back. But if she were to leave this place, it would be hard to say. Especially since Du Fan and the others were still there. He wondered how they were doing. Along the way, the demonic beasts that they encountered along the way were all dealt with by the few of them. There were no major problems. After a day, she also saw that the combat strength of these few people was indeed not weak. However, when the sun set and the sky darkened, she suddenly regained her senses. She had to go. Once the sun went down, she would change back into her human form. If they saw her changing from a beast to a human, wouldn't they be scared out of their wits? Thus, while they weren't paying attention, she ran away like a wisp of smoke. With a few leaps, she disappeared into the grass. When the woman was about to give the little beast the roasted meat, she turned around and found that the little beast that was lying on the rock had disappeared. She couldn't help but be shocked. "Father, did you see the little beast?" Chapter 3209. The woman was slightly unhappy. She glanced at the surroundings and said, perhaps it went back to its owner. Not long after Fingzhou left, the sky darkened and she returned to her human form. She looked at her body and then looked back. After thinking for a while, she took a deep breath and rushed into the depths of the forest. She planned to use the demon beasts here to practice and improve her strength. On the other side, Wanyan Qianhua was following behind Jun Ju Shang in the Xiaoyao sect. She looked at the white-robed man in front of her and smiled. Although her injuries had healed during this period of time, and her body and soul had returned to their original positions, and Jun Ju Shang had been trying to drive her away, she didn't want to leave just like that. After so many years, it was rare for her to meet a man who could move her heart. If she didn't take the initiative to chase after him, how could she be Wanyan Qianhua? In front of her, Jun Ju Shang was walking with his hands behind his back. He suddenly stopped and looked back at the woman who had been following him. He frowned and said, "How long do you plan to follow me?" "Xiaoyao Jun, you're too heartless. Tell me, we're already in such a relationship, yet you still want to chase me away. How am I supposed to live after I go back?" Wanyan Qianhua sighed softly and looked at him with a coquettish expression. "This monarch saved you, and you still want to rely on this monarch." He suppressed his anger and stared at Wanyan Qianhua. He felt that this woman was challenging his bottom line again and again. Seeing the anger in the calm eyes of the person in front of her, Wanyan Qianhua covered her mouth and smiled charmingly. "Xiaoyao Jun, you have been alone for so many years. Don't you think it's time to find someone by your side?" Her eyes were full of affection and her lips were smiling. Her beautiful eyes turned to look at him in a flirtatious manner. "I, Wanyan Qianhua, have only met a man like Xiaoyao Jun who can move my heart in all these years. Although you are a little old, that doesn't stop me from liking you. I am not interested in you," Jun Ju Shang said coldly. "It doesn't matter. As the saying goes, it is easy for a woman to chase a man. I am interested in you, so I will take the initiative." She walked in front of him and hugged his arm. She leaned against him and said, "Xiaoyao Jun, don't you think so?" Looking at the woman who was leaning on him, Jun Ju Shang waved his hand and tried to push her away. Who would have thought that she would hug him even tighter? "Let go." "I won't." "You." Jun Ju Shang had never been able to deal with a woman in his life. He had sternly spoken to her and even used his aura to intimidate her. However, this woman wasn't afraid of him tonight. She was still tightly clinging to him. He couldn't help but feel a sense of defeat. "Xiaoyao Jun, you said that you're an unmarried man, and I'm an unmarried woman. Now that our relationship is like this, and the disciples of the Xiaoyao sect know about us, don't you think you should give me an explanation?" Jun Ju Shang glanced at her with a gloomy face. "You are you, and I am me. We have nothing to do with each other." "Ah." Wanyan Qianhua looked at him in surprise. She covered her mouth and said, "We bathed together and you still say that we have nothing to do with each other. So you want to take advantage of me and not admit it. You know who took advantage of who?" Jun Ju Shang said with a dark face. Chapter 3210. Blue veins appeared on Jun Ju Shang's forehead when he heard these words. His heart was boiling with anger. He took a deep breath and exhaled. He pushed Wanyan Qianhua away. Then, he turned around and left with large strides. He walked towards the bamboo forest. Wanyan Qianhua was pushed away by a force. She lost her balance and retreated a few steps. Just as she was about to follow, she bumped into a barrier that he had set up. Looking at the isolation barrier in front of her, Wanyan Qianhua was stunned. She then laughed, "Jun Ju Shang, you coward." Seeing that she couldn't enter the barrier, she thought for a while and walked back. She was prepared to walk around. She had been here for a while, and most of the people here knew her. Just as she had said, the people in the sect had been spreading rumors about her relationship with Jun Ju Shang. Therefore, their attitude towards her could be considered to be quite respectful. Since she had nothing to do, she went to a big tree behind the rockery to rest. The lush leaves covered her so that the people below couldn't see her. The sun also didn't shine on her body. And resting here is quite good. It's comfortable, she murmured. Yawning, she closed her eyes and rested. She didn't know how much time had passed when she heard some strange noises while she was sleeping soundly. She opened her eyes and looked around. She saw a man and a woman hugging each other tightly under a tree not far away in broad daylight. They were doing something out of the ordinary. TSK, the world's morals are degenerating with each passing day. Their courage is too big. Although this place is a bit remote, they should wait for the sun to set if they want to do this kind of thing. Otherwise, wouldn't it be very embarrassing if they were discovered? However, this woman's figure is also very good. Look at this man's face of enjoyment. His hand is even reaching into the woman's clothes. TSK, this courage. She stood on the tree and looked at the woman's clothes. Half of her clothes were already taken off, revealing her snow-white shoulders. Her chest was faintly discernible, and her long skirt was gently lifted, revealing a pair of long, slender, and smooth legs. On the other hand, the man's clothes were intact. He was panting slightly. He had an anxious look on his face as he buried his head in the woman's chest. When his hand reached under the woman's body, it was caught by her. "Don't." The woman half pushed him away and sat up. She pulled up her clothes and looked around. With a shy expression, she asked, "Senior Marshal Brother Chin, when will you come to my house to propose marriage?" The man's eyes flashed. He chuckled and gently lifted the woman's chin. With an affectionate look, he said, "There have been a lot of things happening in the family recently. After a while, I will send a message back to the family and invite them to propose marriage." As he spoke, his hands began to move erratically again. "Don't worry, I will definitely propose marriage. I will definitely marry you." Hearing these words, Wanyan Qianhua laughed in his heart. This man clearly wanted to take advantage of her. The sweet words that came out of his mouth could only deceive a little girl. This kind of man who started to take advantage of a woman before marriage, how could he be a good person? He reckoned that if this woman let him get his hands on her, she would definitely dump him in the next instant. Looking at the two people who had fallen together again, she glanced with her beautiful eyes and an indescribable smile appeared on her beautiful face. Immediately, she waved her hand and a transparent spirit flew out from her hand towards the two people. Chapter 32:11. Woo-woo! A resentful voice rang out, scaring the two so much that their faces turned pale and they cried out at the same time. "Ah! Who is it?" The man quickly got up and the woman also quickly pulled her clothes and stood up. She hid behind the man to tidy up her clothes and messy hair. Woo! Another faint howl rang out. They couldn't see what was beside them but they could feel a cold wind blowing and their hair stood on end. The two couldn't help but cry out in alarm and quickly leave the place. Wanyan Qianhua chuckled and waved her hand to call the spirit back. She continued to sleep on the tree. In the evening, she jumped down from the tree and walked towards the bamboo forest. She originally wanted to go to Junju Shang's place to take a look. Who knew that the barrier was still there and she couldn't pass through? Seeing this, she smiled and walked towards the bamboo house where she lived. However, she didn't expect that the next morning, someone would come to report to her. Miss Wan Yen, your clansmen have come to take you back. When she heard this, Wan Yen Qianhua, who was still sleepy, walked out of the bamboo house. She glanced at him and asked, "What did you say?" Inexplicably, when he heard this voice, the steward's heart trembled. He lowered his head and said, "Your clansmen have come to take you back. They're right in front." Wan Yen Qianhua chuckled, "Why are my clansmen here?" This is because the sect leader ordered for the Wan Yen clan to come and take you back," the steward said carefully. "So, you notified them?" Wan Yen Qianhua's beautiful eyes turned and landed on the other side of the bamboo house. "Your sect leader knows." The sect leader knows. Hearing this, she didn't know what to think. She paused for a moment and then walked forward. "Let's go. Bring me to see them." "Yes," the steward said and quickly led her to the front. In front of the side hall, a middle-aged man and a young man were sitting and drinking tea. The young man looked at the entrance of the hall from time to time, as if to see if the person he wanted to see had come. The person in the hall who was receiving the two of them was an elder. The elder glanced at them and smiled. "Don't be anxious, Miss Wan Yen will be here in a moment. She lives in the bamboo peak and is a little far from here. She should be here soon after drinking a cup of tea." When the middle-aged man heard this, he put down his teacup and cupped his hands to the elder. "This time, thank you for your help. If Qianhua didn't happen to meet the unfettered sovereign, I'm afraid he wouldn't be able to escape this time. We will definitely remember the great kindness of the unfettered sovereign." "Oh, you're too serious." The elder smiled. Although he heard some things about the sect leader and Wan Yen Qianhua, it was inappropriate for him to say more. Therefore, he just smiled and didn't say much. At present, they still had to send Wan Yen Qianhua away. After all, if the sect leader wanted her to leave, they couldn't keep her in the sect. However, Wan Yen Qianhua was not an ordinary woman, and she was not the kind of person who cared about worldly views. This time, between her and the sect leader, it was obvious that she fell in love with him first. It would be difficult to let her leave. She didn't know if these two people had the ability to bring her back from the Xiaoyao sect. Chapter 32:12. He thought for a while. Not long after, the man who was sitting and looking out of the hall stood up happily and went outside. Seeing this, he looked up at the door of the hall. "Qianhua." The man quickly stepped forward. When he saw Wan Yen Qianhua coming in, he was very happy. He looked at her up and down and asked, "Is your injury better? I haven't seen you for so long. I'm really worried." Wan Yen Qianhua looked at the man and nodded slightly. "Thank you for your concern. I'm fine." She pulled away from him and walked inside. At the same time, she looked at the middle-aged man who was sitting. "Qianhua greets seventh uncle." She bowed to the middle-aged man and called out, "N." The middle-aged man nodded slightly and looked at her. "It seems that your injury should be almost healed." Wan Yen Qianhua smiled slightly. "It's all because Xiaoyao Jun took good care of me. If it weren't for him, my injury wouldn't have healed so quickly." She nodded slightly to the elder and called out, "Hello, elder." When the middle-aged man heard this, he said, "Since your injury has healed, you should go back. You can't keep disturbing Xiaoyao Swordmaster here. This time, we came specially to pick you up." "Yes, Qianhua, the people in the clan are very worried about your injury. Now that your injury has healed, you should go back with us." The man's voice paused, looked at the elder and said, "After all, this is the Xiaoyao sect. You are not a disciple of the Xiaoyao sect. It's not appropriate to stay here for a long time. Hearing this, Wanyan Qianhua smiled and said, "Seventh uncle, I can't go back with you now." "Why?" Before the middle-aged man spoke, the young man had already asked anxiously, "Qianhua, when we just came in, we heard many disciples talking about you and Xiaoyao Swordmaster. Do you know how much it will affect your reputation if you stay here?" Ahem. Hearing this, the elder who had been pretending to drink tea and didn't listen to them coughed a little embarrassedly. He put down the teacup and stood up. "You can talk about this first. I remember that I still have something to do, so I'll go back first. If you are not in a hurry to go back, you can stay here for the night. I'll let the disciples arrange for you later." As he spoke, the elder smiled and cupped his hands towards the middle-aged man before turning around to leave. He was too embarrassed to stay behind to accompany the guest because he was afraid that he would hear something inappropriate. If that happened, it would be awkward for him to stay here. The man looked at her nervously, afraid that he would hear something he didn't want to hear from her. Wanyan Qianhua almost ignored the young man. She looked at the middle-aged man and said, "Seventh uncle, Xiaoyao Jun saved me. I am indebted to him. I have to repay him." Her voice paused, and she looked serious. "Moreover, I can't deny that I am moved by Xiaoyao Jun. For the first time in so many years, I am moved by a man. Although I know that there is some distance between us, and even if I want to be together with him, I will have to face a lot of criticism and difficulties, but I don't want to give up." Chapter 32:13. He looked at Wanyan Qianhua with a heartbroken and sorrowful look. It seemed that he was attracted to a man for the first time in many years, but he was not the one who hurt this man. The middle-aged man pondered. He didn't get angry, nor did he scold her. He just looked at Wanyan Qianhua with a serious face. After a long time, he asked, "Are you serious? In this life, I only recognize him." Wanyan Qianhua said with determination in her beautiful eyes. Maybe others would say that she had known him for such a short time. How could she have such deep feelings for him? If a woman treated a man like this in the past, she would also feel that she couldn't understand. But when this person was herself, she knew that sometimes, falling in love with a person only needed a moment, or even just a glance, and it could be forever. She couldn't say why she fell in love with Jun Jushang. Because in her eyes, he was a cold man at first. Moreover, he was an old man who she didn't know how many years old. But with those days of contact, from the beginning to the end, she didn't know what was going on with her. How did it become real? Even if she knew that this man didn't fall in love with her, even if she knew that this man had been avoiding her and didn't want to have anything to do with her, she still didn't want to give up so easily. Sword Master Xiaoyao is already hundreds of years old. You actually fell in love with a hundreds of years old man. You actually fell in love with such a person. You. The young man was a little agitated and angry. He couldn't accept it. He had always liked Qianhua. Everyone in the clan knew that he liked her. But in order to avoid him, she went to the immortal sect to cultivate. She didn't return to the clan for a year. Now, she said that she fell in love with the master of the Xiaoyao sect, Jun Jushang. Why? What was so good about that Jun Jushang? Why could he make her fall in love with him in such a short time? How did he lose to Jun Jushang? He couldn't accept it. Suppressing the anger in his heart, he looked at Wanyan Qianhua and said, "Qianhua, you have to go back with us. You can't stay here. You can't lose your reputation for a hundreds of years old man. You can't disregard the face of our Wanyan clan." Wanyan Qianhua's gaze turned cold. She stared at the man, and a cold aura emanated from her body. "You keep saying, 100-year-old old man. do you know who you're talking about? Who gave you the guts to be so rude to the master of the unfettered sect? Qianhua de Wanyan Qianhua stood up, flicked his sleeves, and put his hands behind his back. He stared at him coldly. I, Wanyan Qianhua, know what I'm doing. I don't need you to remind me. When the middle-aged man saw this, he raised his hand and said, Okay, you two stop arguing. If others hear this, they'll think that something bad has happened. He motioned for them to sit down, and then said to Wanyan Qianhua, Qianhua, this time, the master of the Xiaoyao sect sent us a message and asked us to come back. From this point of view, he doesn't have any feelings for you. If you continue to stay here, I'm afraid you'll suffer. Seventh uncle is worried about you. He doesn't want you to fall in too deep and get hurt too badly in the future. After all, you and the master of the Xiaoyao sect are. Chapter 32:14. Seeing her firm tone and unwavering expression as she said these words, the middle-aged man pondered for a moment. After a long time, he sighed softly. Fine. If it was any other disciple in the clan, I naturally wouldn't let them do as they pleased. But since it's you, I will respect your wishes and won't stop you. After returning to the clan, I will also report the situation to the family head. He looked at her and said, Since you want to stay, then we won't stay for long. But you have to remember that you chose this path yourself. No matter how many difficulties, criticisms, or pain you encounter in the future, our Wanyan family can't stand up for you. But if you are tired in the future and want to go home, feel free to come back. There will always be a place for you in the Wanyan family. Hearing this, Wanyan Qianhua felt a warm current in her heart. She looked at him and thanked him solemnly. Thank you, seventh uncle. Qianhua knows. She knew because she was the one who fell into this relationship first. She was the one who was moved first. She was the one who insisted on staying here. Therefore, even if she suffered any criticism because of this relationship in the future, the clan couldn't come forward to solve it for her. If that was the case, she would really ruin the reputation of the entire Wanyan family. He could say that there would always be a place for her in the Wanyan family. This was already giving her the greatest tolerance and support. The young man heard these words and looked at this scene, but he couldn't say anything. What else could he say? The person he loved didn't love him back. What else could he say? Then we will go back first. You tell that elder. The middle-aged man said. After saying some good words, he said to the young man, Let's go. The man followed his seventh uncle out. He paused and looked back at Wanyan Qianhua. Thousands of words were in that complicated look. In the end, he only said one sentence. Qianhua, take care. With that, he strode out. Wanyan Qianhua didn't send them off. She just watched them leave until their figures disappeared from her sight. However, at this time, she saw the elder come in again. The elder glanced at Wanyan Qianhua. He didn't seem surprised that she didn't leave. He just coughed lightly and said, I heard from the disciples that your seventh uncle and the others left, so I came to take a look. Wanyan Qianhua nodded. They left. I will stay here for a while. Hearing this, the elder smiled. That's good. You can stay here. You can stay for as long as you want, but the sect master. I will tell him. Elder, you don't have to worry. She said, bowed to the elder, and then turned to leave. Seeing Wanyan Qianhua leave, the elder stood there and stroked his beard. He thought to himself, the sect master has cultivated for many years and experienced countless experiences and tests, but he hasn't experienced the tribulation of love. This time, he saved Wanyan Qianhua so coincidentally. It's probably related to his tribulation of love. I just don't know what will happen to these two people in the future. From his point of view, Wanyan Qianhua was very outstanding in all aspects. He was also very compatible with the sect master. If the two of them could have a happy ending, it could be considered that one of his worries had been removed. Chapter 32:15. Wanyan Qianhua walked towards the bamboo forest. Seeing that the barrier had been removed, she couldn't help but curl her lips into a flirtatious smile. She playfully said, "Could it be that you thought she had left? That's why you removed the barrier." She walked forward and arrived in front of the bamboo house. She saw a man in white holding an ancient book and reading it. She pushed the door open and walked in. It seems like Xiao Yao Jun is very free. Her beautiful eyes fell on him. She glanced at the book in his hand and said, "With Xiao Yao Jun's knowledge, do you still need to read this kind of miscellaneous book?" As she spoke, she had already entered the house. Her body seemed to have no bones as she sat down on the couch next to Junju Shang. She supported her chin with one hand and looked at him with interest. "Xiao Yao Jun, how could you let someone send a message to the Wanyan clan and let them take me back? You're not very kind to do this." Junju Shang looked at her in front of him. His voice was calm and even carried a trace of coldness as he asked, "Why haven't you left? Didn't I tell you already? My heart is in love with the unfettered Lord. How can I leave before the unfettered Lord reciprocates my feelings?" She twirled her fingers and played with her hair. Her beautiful eyes fell on the man in front of her. She said it lightly as if she was just casually saying it. However, only she knew that she was nervous and shy. After all, as a woman, how could she remain calm when confessing to a man she loved? However, she had always been a person who didn't care about trifles. She didn't care about how others looked at her. That was why she could say it so calmly. That was why she was able to be ignored time and time again. After being ignored, she still hoped to get a response. She knew that for a woman with such a beautiful appearance like her, many people wouldn't believe her if she said that she loved a man. Because she had the appearance of a bad woman. Every frown and smile of hers had a kind of seductive charm. She gave people the feeling that she was a bad woman who wouldn't give her true feelings. Because of this, if she wanted to get a response from someone she loved, she was afraid that she would have to pay more than others. "It's impossible between you and me. Don't waste your time on me," Junju Shang said. He put down the book in his hand, and stood up. He was about to walk out when he saw that the boneless woman had already arrived in front of him, and was blocking his way. "If you haven't tried, how do you know it's impossible with me?" Wanyan Qianhua looked at him, only to see that his calm and indifferent eyes were bottomless, as deep as the sea. It was impossible to see what he was thinking. Junju Shang frowned as he looked at her. His voice was as cold as an icicle. "You're a woman, yet you're so shameless. If I knew that you would pester me because I saved you, then I wouldn't have saved you." As soon as he finished speaking, he flicked his sleeves and strode outside. Wanyan Qianhua listened to the words that pierced her heart like ice shards. She only felt a chill spread from her heart, causing her to involuntarily shiver. Chapter 32:16. She stood there, thinking about something. She didn't move for a long time. After a while, she raised her head and looked outside. Junju Shang was nowhere to be seen. However, what he said just now was still echoing in her ears. "Am I really shameless?" She murmured softly, with a trace of confusion in her eyes. "Do you regret saving me?" In the past, it was those men who chased after her. Now, it was her turn to chase after someone. However, she was ruthlessly rejected time and time again. At this moment, she clearly felt how hurtful the rejection was. Although she knew that it wouldn't be easy to get this love from him, and if they were to be together, they would have to go through a lot of problems. However, she couldn't help but feel a trace of confusion at this moment. Was it really just her wishful thinking? No matter how hard she tried, she wouldn't be able to go far. Did she really want to continue? She, who had never experienced, was at a loss at this moment. The words she said to her seventh uncle were still echoing in her ears. However, she was at a loss at this moment that I wonder what she would do if it was Xiaozhou. She murmured and thought of Fingzhou. What would she do if it was her? She walked out slowly and walked back to her bamboo house listlessly. Therefore, she didn't see that after she left, a white figure walked out from the bamboo forest and looked at her quietly with his hands clasped behind his back. Jun Shang's eyes were as deep as the sea. His body was still as indifferent as before. He quietly watched Wanyan Qianhua return to her bamboo house. Then, he closed his eyes and covered his expression as he walked into the house. After returning to her bamboo house, Wanyan Qianhua took out her communication jade with Fingzhou. She was hesitating whether she should ask Fingzhou or not. Therefore, she kept playing with the communication jade in her hand. Only when the sky outside was getting dark did she decide to tell Fingzhou about it. At the same time, she wanted to ask what she would do if it was her. On the other side, Fingzhou didn't know about it. Because of the beast form elixir, she had been in her beast form during the day and human form during the night. She had been wandering in the forest. On this day, as the sky was getting dark, she found a cave residence and planned to cultivate her spiritual aura. Therefore, she didn't notice the message on the communication jade in her space. She stayed in the forest for half a month. During this half a month, she went to the forest to hunt demonic beasts during the day to improve her reaction and fighting strength. When she returned to her human form at night, she cultivated her spiritual aura. Just like that, half a month had passed. This morning, when she opened her eyes and found that she was still in her human form, she couldn't help but smile. Is the effect of the beast form elixir finally gone? It's been half a month. That's really long. But thinking about it, how could a 7th level beast form elixir restore her original form in 2 or 3 days? Looks like I have to celebrate today. She was in a good mood today and wanted to celebrate. When she walked in the forest, some small demonic beasts around her automatically avoided her. After all, during this half a month, all the demonic beasts in this area were afraid of her. When they saw her, they would turn around and leave. Chapter 32:17. Other than these people, there was also the young man she had saved and 2 injured elders. However, the one who was in the worst condition was the woman who was being carried by her father. After not seeing her for half a month, the woman's face had become pale and bloodless. There were large scars all over her body and her aura was extremely weak. She looked like she would not live for long. "It's you, Fairy!" The man she had saved shouted in surprise. Because his leg was injured, he limped over to Fingzhou. "Fairy, I didn't expect to meet you here again. You saved me last time, I haven't thanked you yet." The man stared at the woman in red before him in excitement. Now that he had seen her again, he was certain that what he had seen that day was real. The woman before him was still dressed in a dazzling red robe, and she was still as beautiful as before. Although her eyes were cold, he felt a sense of familiarity and excitement when he met his savior again. "Fairy, thank you for saving my life last time." The man bowed solemnly to Fingzhou to express his gratitude. Fingzhou nodded. "It was nothing. This is..." The middle-aged man carrying his daughter came to the front and looked at Fingzhou in red. Although the woman was alone, she was extremely beautiful and had an extraordinary temperament. He could not help but be surprised. This woman was very brave. She actually dared to come here alone and was in such a dangerous place. Yet, she was still calm and collected. She was definitely not someone ordinary women could compare to. Father, we got lost some time ago. I was chased by a demon wolf in the forest. It was this fairy who saved me. The man turned around and said excitedly, when I came back to my senses, the fairy had already left. I didn't expect to meet you here again. It's really fate. Hearing this, the corner of Fengzhou's mouth twitched. However, she only smiled and did not say anything else. I see. The middle-aged man came to a sudden realization. Only then did he place his daughter on his back under a tree to rest. Then, he cupped his hands and bowed to Fengzhou. Thank you, fairy, for saving my child. I am extremely grateful. Fengzhou nodded. Her gaze fell on the woman and said, this lady seems to be quite sick. Hearing this, the middle-aged man's expression darkened. This is my daughter. Her body is not good and she has been with us for a long time. Her body could not take it and collapsed. I know a little about medicine. If you don't mind, I can take a look at her. Fengzhou said as her gaze fell on the woman. This woman was somewhat faded with her. Now that the beast form pill's effects had worn off, it would not be a problem to treat her with acupuncture. Hearing these words, the middle-aged man and the others were stunned. There was no surprise, only hesitation and inquiry. Suddenly, a person appeared out of nowhere, claiming that he knew medicine and wanted to treat his daughter. Why did it sound a little unreliable? Although he knew that his daughter's health was not good, especially now, it did not mean that he could let his daughter be treated by a random person who came out and said that he knew medicine. After all, who knew if something more serious would happen? As a doctor and an alchemist, Fengzhou could guess their feelings and understand their distrust. Since he was going to help, then he would help until the end. Chapter 32:18. Can you be at ease now? Fengzhou looked at the middle-aged man and asked. In his heart, he thought that it was rare for her to be so kind as to want to save someone. However, he didn't expect that she would have to show her badge before the other party would believe in her medical skills. If it wasn't for their previous relationship, she probably wouldn't have bothered with him. After all, as the ghost doctor, she had her own pride. Mainly, it was very rare for her to open her mouth to treat someone. When they saw the badge, several people couldn't help but widen their eyes in shock. They looked at the young woman in front of them in disbelief. Especially the middle-aged man, who was extremely emotional. His eyes were red. It was this Chang who didn't recognize Mount Tai. I was rude. The middle-aged man repeatedly apologized to Fengzhou while bowing deeply to Fengzhou. Thank you for your trouble. Fengzhou nodded slightly and went to the woman to take her pulse. Perhaps because of the touch, the woman woke up from her deep sleep. She looked at the woman in red in a daze. She didn't know why, but the moment she opened her eyes, she actually saw the woman in red in front of her as the beautiful red little beast. Who are you? The woman asked, a pair of listless eyes staring at Fengzhou. Fengzhou smiled slightly. You can call me the ghost doctor. Ghost doctor? You're a doctor. The woman looked at her. Seeing the smile on her lips, it made that beautiful face even more moving. She couldn't help but praise from the bottom of her heart, you're really beautiful. Fengzhou smiled and said, I'll help you with the acupuncture. Try to relax your body as much as possible. Thank you, but my illness is not easy to cure. I'm afraid I'll have to trouble you. The woman said, still looking at the beautiful woman in front of her. She felt that the woman's beauty was so moving and pleasing to the eye. Even her mood couldn't help but improve. Fengzhou didn't say much. He just took out the silver needles and started to treat the woman. It was unknown if the woman was too tired or if her body couldn't take it, but she gradually closed her eyes and fell asleep. The few people at the side watched with their hearts in their mouths. They were nervous and apprehensive, especially when they saw the woman in red take out the silver needles one by one and insert them without thinking. That kind of casual and that kind of technique made their foreheads break out in a cold sweat. However, when they thought of the badge, everyone comforted themselves. It's okay, it's okay. The other party have that kind of badge, their worries can be said to be superfluous. About an hour later, Feng Jiu put away the silver needles. At the same time, he took out a pill and fed it to the woman. Finally, he sent a trace of the life force of the green lotus into her body. Finally, he stood up. It's done. She put everything away and looked at them. Especially the middle-aged man, he looked at Fengjiu in a daze. His lips trembled. Ghost doctor, this is okay. What do you mean? Looking at the middle-aged man's nervous expression, Fengjiu smiled. Your daughter is fine now. You don't have to stay here for too long. Take her back and recuperate for a while. Her body will naturally recover. As for the illness on her body, it's fine now. Chapter 32:19. Of course it's true. Fengjiu smiled. Just as she was about to speak, a whirlpool suddenly appeared in the air and she was sucked into the whirlpool. The ghost doctor. When the middle-aged man and the others saw this, they rushed forward and tried to pull her back, but they were repelled by a force. Feng Jiu, who was sucked into the vortex, shouted at them, "It's okay. I'm going to leave here." As soon as she said that, the whirlpool gradually merged and disappeared into the air. Feng Jiu also disappeared, leaving the Stunching family members standing there, unable to regain their senses for a long time. After a long while, an old man took a deep breath and said, "Family head, we have met a hidden expert. This ghost doctor's strength is not ordinary. Moreover, the whirlpool teleportation array that appeared in the void is not something that can be opened by ordinary people. Young Miss is really fortunate this time, to have met the ghost doctor on this trip. Thinking about it, her illness should not be a problem anymore." Hearing that, the middle-aged man sighed and slowly nodded. "That's right, meeting the ghost doctor is indeed our fortune." He turned his head to look at his unconscious daughter and went forward to check on her. Seeing that her breathing was stabilizing, he could not help but feel relieved. "Her condition is much better than before," the middle-aged man said as he helped his daughter up. At this moment, the woman who was still unconscious slowly opened her eyes. "Father. You're awake. Are you feeling better?" The middle-aged man asked, looking at her with a face full of concern. "Father, I just had a dream. In the dream, that beautiful red little beast turned into a fairy and came to save me. It even talked to me," the girl said in a daze. Looking at the stunned people around her, she was a little confused. "What's wrong with all of you?" "I'm telling the truth. I just dreamt of a very beautiful fairy. I don't know why, but I felt that she was very similar to the little beast." Hearing that, everyone looked at each other and shook their heads in unison. That was a fairy with superb medical skills, a fairy called the ghost doctor. How could it be that little red beast? Moreover, they were still able to differentiate between humans and beasts. The middle-aged man smiled and said, "Just now, we met a woman called Ghost Doctor. She helped you with acupuncture treatment and even gave you a pill to eat. I just helped you check, your body's aura is better than before. It seems that your illness is really going to be cured. Also, that ghost doctor is dressed in red, but she's definitely not the little red beast we met half a month ago." He smiled and patted her shoulder. "All right, we should go back. This place is dangerous and we shouldn't stay here for long. Especially now that your body has recovered, there's no need for you to stay here. Thus, the group of people discussed and left. On the other side, after being sucked into the whirlpool, Fengjiu returned to the back mountain of Danwang Valley. She turned around and steadied herself. Looking at the old man who was sitting at the side, her eyes flashed slightly. Only then did she walk up to him. "Master." He, you're back." Danwang stroked his beard and looked at her. He asked with a smile, "How have you been in the past 2 weeks?" Chapter 32:20. Ha 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 ha, as long as it's interesting. You don't need to thank me. This is what I should do. Danwang laughed loudly. He looked at Fengjiu and said, "Since you're back, don't waste time. Go and refine the beast form pill. There's still a 3-day deadline. If you can't refine the beast form pill in 3 days, then..." He didn't finish his sentence, but his meaning was clear. "Yes, your disciple will not disappoint you." As she spoke, she fixed her gaze on the Pill King. Seeing this, Danwang nodded, "All right. Then I'll come back in 3 days. I hope you won't disappoint me," he said as he turned around to leave. At this time, he heard Fengjiu's voice. "Master, wait." Danwang stopped and looked back. He raised his white eyebrows and asked, "Is there something else? I don't know how long I'll have to stay here to cultivate. So, I want to find a time to send my subordinates away," she said as she looked at him. "No rush, no rush. Your subordinates are too weak. Just stay here for a while." His voice paused, and a smile appeared on his face. He glanced at Fengjiu with narrowed eyes and said, "Moreover, in the half a month that you weren't here, Master had people help you train them. Even if you want to see them now, you probably won't be able to. Wait for a while. I'll let you see them after a while. At that time, if you want them to leave first, I'll send them away. You don't need to worry about them. You should worry about yourself first. If you can't refine the beast form pill in 3 days, He smiled and left without saying anything else. Seeing him leave, Fengjiu looked at the cauldron on the side and her eyes moved. She didn't refine the pill right away. Instead, she went to prepare the ingredients for the beast form pill. When night fell, she began to refine the beast form pill. When she was in the demonic beast's forest, she would repeatedly think about which step was wrong. Why couldn't he refine the beast form pill? With her current strength, 7th level medicinal pills were not difficult, but it was difficult to obtain. Every type of medicinal pill was refined differently, and everyone's refining method was also different. Especially 7th level medicinal pills, if there was a mistake in one step, then there would be a mistake in the following steps. And this pill furnace, how was she going to control it? That night, after countless failures, she gradually gained some insight. Thus, on the 3rd day, when the sky gradually brightened and 3 bolts of lightning descended from the sky, she smiled. The 7th rank beast form pill has finally been refined. She watched as the 3 bolts of heavenly lightning struck the pill furnace. Streaks of spiritual power were refined and returned to the pill furnace. When she stepped forward to take out the pills inside, Danwang also arrived. I heard the sound of pill lightning from afar. Not bad. Danwang slowly walked over with an old man following behind him. As for the other alchemists in Danwang's valley, although they heard the sound of pill lightning, they only found out that it was Fengjiu who refined the pill and didn't ask about it. Chapter 32:21. At the back of the mountain, Fengjiu placed the pills on a small jade plate and walked towards Danwang. "Master, please take a look. When Dan Wang saw the 2 pills on the jade plate in her hand, a trace of surprise flashed through his eyes. He smiled and nodded. Not bad, your first pill is already a top-grade pill. You are indeed talented. When the old man next to him heard this, he also took a step forward to take a look. He was also secretly shocked. This kind of quality, this kind of smell, this kind of pill veins, it was obvious that this young Valley Master's talent in alchemy was really extraordinary. As long as Master is satisfied. She smiled and put the 2 pills into 2 small bottles. She kept one for herself and handed the other to Dan Wang. This one is for Master. Dan Wang nodded and didn't refuse. He took the pill and said, since you have refined a 7th order beast form pill, you should rest well today. I have already told the kitchen to prepare a spirit meat feast for you so that you can replenish your spiritual power and body. Come here tomorrow morning and wait. I will bring another pill recipe for you to refine. Yes. Fengjiu responded, then this disciple will go back to rest first. After saying this, she bowed and left first. After she left, the old man looked at Dan Wang and asked, Dan Wang, won't this give her too much pressure? She is not an ordinary person. How could she not be able to withstand this kind of pressure? Giving her more pressure will allow her to grow under pressure. This will only be good for her. Dan Wang stroked his beard and said with a smile, let's go. Let's go back and drink a few cups. Thus, the 2 of them also left, leaving only the pill furnace in the back of the mountain. Just as Dan Wang said, the kitchen had prepared a lot of food for her. There was stewed soup, spirit beast meat, and so on. After she took a bath and rested for a while, the food was sent over one after another. In the cave residence, the table was full of food. After those people left, she called out the contract beasts in the space and let them eat together. Tan Yun, who had been waiting here for more than 10 days, told her what had happened after she left. Master, Du Fan and the others were taken away by people arranged by Dan Wang a few days after you left. I wanted to go with them, but they didn't let me, so I could only wait here for you to come back. As for what happened to them, I don't know now. Fengjiu already knew about this, so she said, it should be fine. Don't worry, maybe they will come back after a while. Dan King said that he wanted to increase their strength. She thought that it was probably true, but she didn't know what he would do. It seemed that they could only wait for Du Fan and the others to return before they would know if their strength had really increased. Master, are we not going to leave? Are we going to stay here forever? Lao Bai asked. After all, they had been here for more than half a month. Although my master's behavior is a bit strange, I can't deny that he is indeed very capable. Since I'm already here, I'll stay here to cultivate and improve myself. She paused and said, when Du Fan and the others come back, I will let them go back first so that they can take care of the residents. Otherwise, I will be worried. Chapter 32-22. She was a little surprised. After eating her fill, she let the little beasts return to the space. Then, she asked the people outside to pack up and leave. Then, she checked the communication jade tablets. Langhua's transmission jade tablet only said that everything was fine in the mansion recently. Mo was also cultivating in seclusion. Hao was also very obedient and she didn't need to worry. There was also Wanyan Shirsan's communication jade tablet. His voice came from it, saying that he was wandering around and encountered some interesting things. The last one was Wanyan Qinhua's communication jade tablet. When she heard Wanyan Qinhua's confused and lonely voice, she couldn't help but be surprised. Sword Master Xiaoyao. Her sister actually fell in love with Sword Master Xiaoyao. But Sword Master Xiaoyao seemed indifferent and even wanted to drive her away. She had only heard of Sword Master Xiaoyao, and it was only after Wanyan Qianhua was saved by him that she heard of him. Therefore, when she heard that her sister actually fell in love with Sword Master Xiaoyao, she was also surprised. It was said that Sword Master Xiaoyao was already several hundred years old. Although several hundred years didn't mean anything in the world of cultivation, the two had different experiences and especially different statuses. It would be very difficult for them to be together. Moreover, the most important point was that Sword Master Xiaoyao didn't seem to be moved by her sister. Instead, it was her sister who fell in love with him first. If that was the case, then only her sister would suffer. Thinking of this, she frowned. In the communication jade tablet, her sister asked her what she would do if she was in love with him. However, she was her. Everyone's way of doing things was different. Naturally, they couldn't be compared to each other. Therefore, she only gave her some objective advice. Since she had fallen in love with him, then she should persevere. After all, if Sword Master Xiaoyao wasn't made of stone, then he would also be moved one day. Moreover, with her sister Wanyan Qianhua's charm, she didn't believe that there wouldn't be a man who wouldn't be moved. Right now, she wasn't able to deal with the situation here. Her future was also unknown. Therefore, she planned to stay here and learn from her master for a while. Then, she would go to the Xiaoyao sect to see her sister. She also wanted to see the master of the Xiaoyao sword, Jun Ju Shang, who made her sister fall in love with him. That day, she tried her best to relax and rest, adjusting her state of mind. The next morning, she went out at dawn. Not long after she arrived at the back of the mountain, she saw her master. "You're early. It looks like you can't wait to know what kind of pill you're refining this time, right?" Dan Wang stroked his beard and smiled, his smiling eyes falling on Fengjiu. Hearing this, Fengjiu only smiled and asked, "Master, what pill are you refining today?" Dan Wang stroked his beard and glanced at her. "This is the pill recipe. Take it and have a look. You still have 3 days. 3 days later, I'll come back to check on the pill." Seeing him flick his sleeves and walk away, Fengjiu looked at the pill recipe in her hand. She wasn't in a hurry to refine the pill. Instead, she studied it. The more she looked at the pill recipe in her hand, the stranger she felt. Why do I feel like there's something wrong with this pill recipe? These two ingredients are conflicting. How can they be put together? She muttered doubtfully. The more she looked, the more she felt that this pill recipe was more troublesome than the beast form pill. Chapter 32-23. All right. It couldn't be said that he was tidying her up, he was just finding trouble for her. Although she felt that this pill recipe was strange, she still tried to find a way to resolve the conflicting medicinal effects. However, after 3 days, she still couldn't find a way to balance the medicinal effects. Once the 3rd day was up, her master came again. "Hee, how is it?" He looked at Fengjiu with a smile, as if he was looking for trouble for her. "Master, the medicinal ingredients in this recipe are conflicting. Your disciple has tried for 3 days, but still couldn't find a way. I wonder if Master can explain a thing or two." She looked at him and asked. Dan Wang stroked his beard and looked at her, nodding. "As your master, if you encounter something you don't understand, I naturally have to give you a pointer or two." He walked forward with a smile and said, "The medicinal pill in this pill formula is actually a level 8 medicinal pill. It will be quite difficult for you. Moreover, you haven't refined a level 8 medicinal pill before, right?" Fengjiu shook her head, "No." Then that's right. Among the 8th level pills, many of the spiritual herbs in the recipe have conflicting medicinal properties. If you want to refine them, you have to find a balance between these medicinal properties. Only by resolving the conflicting medicinal properties of the spiritual herbs will you have a 50% chance of refining an 8th level pill. As for the remaining 50%, it will depend on your control of the flame and your familiarity with the spiritual herbs. He came to the table with the spiritual herbs and picked up 2 of the spiritual herbs. Look at these 2 spiritual herbs. They have conflicting properties. If you want to add them into the medicine, you have to start from these 2 spiritual herbs. Or, think about whether there are other spiritual herbs that can alleviate the conflicting properties of these 2 spiritual herbs and merge them into one. Hearing this, Fengjiu was slightly stunned. Could something like this happen in an 8th level pill recipe? Thinking of this, her expression couldn't help but become serious. If that was the case, then this was really a difficult problem in refining pills. Dan Wang glanced at her and said, "You'll have to figure out the details yourself. If I tell you directly, it won't be the same as if you figure it out yourself." He paused for a moment and stared at Fengjiu with a smile. "However, I'm not here to tell you this today." Fengjiu looked at him and asked, "Master, where do you want to send me to train?" She found that this old man especially liked to use the teleportation array to send her to other places to gain experience. She didn't know what was so strange about it. "Ha ha ha, it's good that you know. Master is doing this for your own good." As he spoke, he drew a formation on the ground. When the transportation formation was completed, he looked at her and said meaningfully, "Last time, I sent you to a dangerous place. This time, I'll send you to another place." "Another place?" Fengjiu raised his eyebrows. "Another deep forest." Hee, little girl, do you think that there are only a few continents in this world? Do you think that training can only be done in the deep forest? He stroked his beard and smiled mysteriously. Hearing this, Fengjiu's eyes flashed. "Master might not know, but I came from the lower realm and have been to many places." Chapter 32-24. Fengjiu was slightly startled. 100 seriously ill people. Is this the punishment for this trial? That's right, Master knows that your medical skills are not bad, so you don't need to treat most of the minor illnesses. You can only choose to treat those who are seriously ill, and these people cannot be unpardonable evildoers, nor can they be people who harm the common people. You can't search for them, you can only meet them, and save those who are fated. Once you've treated 100 people, Master will naturally bring you back. Hearing this, Fengjiu's expression could not help but reveal a trace of strangeness. "You're not by my side, how do you know everything about me?" "Hee, you don't need to care about this." With a flick of his sleeve, he pushed her into the array, and at the same time, a talisman formed from spiritual energy was flicked towards her. Following the activation of the array, a light flashed, and Fengjiu also disappeared from the array. When Fengjiu fell out of a black hole, she felt that something was wrong. She tried to stabilize her body, but she still could not stand firm, and directly fell to the ground. Hiss! She groaned, and when she looked down, she could not help but be startled. What's going on? It's fine if my strength is suppressed to the foundation establishment stage, but why is this? Looking down at herself, she was wearing a set of tattered clothes, and not only was her original red clothes gone, even her black hair was messy and scattered, and there was a layer of dark green bark-like thing on her hands, as if there was something growing on her skin. It was very disgusting. Looking down, her gaze fell on her left leg, and her left leg was unexpectedly weak and out of control. After being startled, she stabilized her state of mind, and stood up with the help of a big tree beside her. She tried to use both of her legs to step on the ground, and sure enough, her left leg was not under any force. This old man wants to play me to death, right? How did he make me look like this? When did he do something? She took a deep breath, and was somewhat in disbelief. No wonder he said that it was enough for her to treat 100 people, so he made her look like this. With her current appearance, who would believe that she knew medicine? Who would dare to let her treat them? She checked her pulse and found that there was nothing wrong with her body. However, her left leg was weak and she had to limp when she wanted to walk. She tugged at the clothes on her body, wanting to take them off and change. Who knew that the old clothes on her body couldn't be taken off? This made her clench her teeth. This old man, does he want her to wear these clothes and stay here without bathing for 10 days to half a month? She took a deep breath and calmed herself down. Then, she walked into the forest and chopped a tree branch to use as a walking stick. She supported herself with it as she limped along the path. The sun above her head wasn't small. Along the way, only the trees on the side of the road could block half of the sunlight. After walking for a while, she took out some water from her space and drank a few mouthfuls before continuing to walk forward. Until she came to a town in front of her. Just as she was about to limp into the town, she was stopped by the guards. Where did this beggar come from? Walk, walk, walk. Beggars can't enter the city. Leave quickly. Chapter 32:25. Hiss. Her left leg was weak, and the other party was a mystic, so the force was not light. Caught off guard, she was pushed to the ground. Her palms scratched the sand on the ground, and a trace of blood seeped out. Go, go, go. Hurry up and leave, the city guard shouted sternly, almost going forward to kick her. Fengjiu stood up with the help of her walking stick. She glanced at the two city guards and said, "I'm not a beggar." The city guard sized up the person in front of him. He was wearing tattered clothes and was using a tree branch as a walking stick. His face was covered in soot and he couldn't see clearly. Coupled with his messy hair, he looked like a beggar no matter how he looked at him. Hurry up and leave. The city guard waved his hand to chase her away, refusing to let her in. When Fengjiu saw this, she took out a badge from her space. Look carefully. I'm a doctor, not a beggar. Seeing the badge, the two city guards were stunned. You're a doctor. They sized up Fengjiu in disbelief. You didn't steal this badge, did you? The corner of Fengjiu's mouth twitched. She glanced at the two and said, "Is a doctor's badge so easy to steal? Why don't you steal one for me to see?" Seeing this, the two city guards looked at each other, walked to the side, and muttered a few words. Finally, they gestured. Go in. But with your current state, you probably won't have a place to stay even if you go in. As the two city guards spoke, they ignored Fengjiu and walked back to the city gate to stand guard, watching the people entering and leaving. Fengjiu put away the badge and limped inside. When she looked inside, she saw that most of the people inside were mystic. There were no spirit cultivators. She walked to a small stall. Before she could get close, she saw someone reaching out to push her. This time, she dodged to the side and looked at the person. What are you doing? Fengjiu looked at the man and frowned. You beggar, who allowed you to enter the city? Why are you approaching my stall? Are you trying to hinder my business? Go, go, go. Get out of here. Why don't you take a look at yourself first? Fengjiu glanced at the man indifferently. He didn't waste his breath on him and continued walking forward. However, regardless of whether she approached the stalls or the inns, she was chased away before she could even get close. She had been wandering around here for the whole day. Seeing that the sky was getting dark, she still hadn't found a place to stay. She thought for a moment. Since she couldn't find a place to stay, she would probably have to sleep outside tonight. However, just as she was about to leave, she saw an old woman being chased out of a pharmacy. Due to the force of the push, the old woman fell to the ground. The skin on her head was broken and blood seeped out. However, she did not pay attention to the injury on her forehead. Instead, she crawled up and cried as she begged. "Dr. Liu, please come with me to see my son. He really can't hold on any longer. I beg you, I beg you." The old woman cowed out as she cried and begged. However, there were many people around, but they only discussed and watched coldly. The people in the medicine shop didn't even show their faces. Obviously, they didn't want to bother. You're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.